Welcome back to another episode of Movified. I'm your host, Mark Hirschi, owner of Salmon's Moving and Stores located in beautiful British Columbia. And today I have a special guest, a friend of mine. At least I pretend to say he's my friend. It's Prabh Heer from You Move Me. And if you haven't heard of You Move Me, you must be hiding underneath a rock because these guys are blowing up the scene and have been for the last couple of years. Prabh, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I feel like Prabh's going to be super nervous, but he doesn't want to totally shoot the shit on here because he just feels like he's going to get harassed. He's trying to be super professional, so I appreciate that. But I don't want you to at all.
Don't worry.
All right, cool. So let's kind of just jump right back into the beginning because you were part of the O2E brand. And the whole 1-800-GOT-JUNK empire, where You Move Me kind of got started. Can you tell me a little bit about what your role was going into it, and then where you decide to go after, and then how you've come back into You Move Me?
Yeah. So my journey with You Move Me, where it all began. So I moved to Vancouver in 2010. I was going back to school. I went to Kwantlen. And I remember reading in a couple marketing books about Brian Scudamore and this place called The Junction. I was going, that sounds like such a cool place to work. I'd love to be a part of that someday. Fast forward to after graduation, I'm randomly applying for every job possible as a new college grad does. And I came upon a job posting at You Move Me. I found out that You Move Me was part of the 1-800-GOT-JUNK family of brands, and I'd have the opportunity to work in The Junction. So I was really excited because I looked up to Brian Scudamore. I was applying for the job. I ended up getting it after a few rounds of interviews. And I kind of started out as humble beginnings as you can. I was the kind of guy when we were a small moving business that was going door to door to furniture stores trying to get delivery contracts. And it was completely out of my wheelhouse. And I remember when my boss was like, I'll do all the estimates inside Vancouver, but you can do them outside of the city. And the first estimate I did was a 5,000 square foot house, full pack and move. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And so in between,
what was your role coming into it when you first got hired? Doing sales? Was that the whole thing?
Yeah, so it was sales. It was a business development representative. So I was supposed to go get outside business contracts into it. And I'd do the occasional inbound lead as an estimate. And so I did a couple of days of shadowing, but with zero moving experience and zero experience in estimating, I had to do a 5,000 square foot house pack and move as my first estimate. Needless to say, they didn't book, and I was so grateful for it. But I got immersed into it. And eventually, after getting rejected from probably 45 or 50 different furniture stores for delivery contracts because our prices were too high, I started converting a lot on estimates. And he's like, you know what? I'm just going to let you do all the estimates. Not to say I was converting.
Sorry to jump in here because I kind of want to break that down. They always say, especially when you're in sales, right? To accept no all the time is a huge, and especially when you are starting out, what a letdown, right? You're gung-ho, you think you have this You Move Me brand. I mean, I remember when it first got launched, I was like, holy shit, the marketing money that must be thrown into this company must be huge because everywhere I'd turn on the computer, I would see an ad. I would start seeing the signs outside. I was seeing commercials. I was seeing everything being pumped into this. And here you are going to furniture stores going, hey, listen, we got this delivery option. We can have, take care of you and everything, and shutting you down. And you're saying based on price, but what was the motivation to kind of keep going? That must be such a piss off, right? You're just why are you guys not just kind of signing me up?
Yeah, honestly, it was the biggest slap across the face in terms of my own ability, because before in another life, I would be selling phones at a T-Booth or Wireless Wave in the mall, and I was killing it. So to be told no once or twice, sure, that bruises the ego a bit, but to be told no 40 or 50 times, it really starts to get to you. And I'd be lying to say if it didn't get to me, right? It was very, very hard to accept, and I wanted to quit every day of it. But the reality was I needed a job, I had a mortgage I needed to pay for, so I was just going to keep at it. And eventually, I realized that looking at these delivery contracts, it wasn't really the best option, and we needed to pivot and we needed to look at doing something differently. So instead of going after furniture stores, I started just cold calling realtors. Same thing though, if they would answer the call, which they would answer the call about 1% of the time maybe, they'd be like, I have no idea who you are. I don't want what you're selling me, and hang up the phone. And honestly, it probably took like 2.5 years of grinding, calling people repeatedly, and them just be like, well, let's just give this guy a shot. Because I always need a mover recommendation. And that kind of like really opened the door to a lot of referrals. And I kind of didn't have to do the furniture store grind or go to storage facilities anymore. And I was really able to just leverage my relationships with realtors that I met. And it's kind of like you really just need one to start out with, because one will refer you to two will refer you to two others, that makes it four. And then it just kind of continues to compound. I'd say in 2024, I've been out of the moving franchise for coming on 6 years at this point, and I still give them referrals on a monthly basis. That's how strong those relationships that I've forged are. And I probably know, no exaggeration, at least 400 realtors in the Lower Mainland on a first name basis.
And I believe it too. I remember stepping out of the game, for a lot of networking, right? Because like before our business was, we were doing really well. We had good networking, and I stepped aside. And then when I purchased Salmon's, I was like, all right, I got to get back into this. Maybe I got to go check out a couple networking events, some BNIs, everything else. And everybody's like, oh yeah, do you know Prabh? And I was like, who is this clown of a character that is, stepping on my turf here and doing all the networking that I used to do? And like you said, it's like building these relationships. I get, I'm like you, I get sometimes like the most random text messages or phone calls. I don't remember having this person in my phone being like, hey, you moved me like 8 years ago, or do you remember that like coffee that we had? I'm looking for a mover now. And I'm like, yeah, for sure. Like, let's set it up. So yeah, building those relationships, I think is key.
I think it's like, also like, it's one thing to build them, but it's another thing to maintain them, right? Like, you don't really need a lot of touch points with people. You don't need to call them on a monthly basis. Hey, do you have any moves for me or anything? It's more about like, if you're top of mind just as a good person, they're actually going to want to gravitate to referring you. And that's kind of what I did. I didn't have like a Rolodex where I'd be like, oh, I've got to follow up with this person every 2 weeks, or using the CRM to follow up with them. It was like keeping it as organic as possible and really taking the pressure off the realtor. Because like ultimately for me, it wasn't like I was going to give them the cheapest price, because it wasn't going to happen. But one thing I would say is like, I'll take care of your client, but really I'm just asking for the opportunity to meet them. There's no pressure where if you refer me to them that they have to go with us, but like give them the choice to at least meet me. And then that way, for me, from my perspective, I'm saving the Google ad dollars, and I'm able just to transfer that into maybe buying that realtor lunch or something. And we just build a better relationship. And then if you do a good job, the second, third, and fourth referral just come organically.
You had said, before that you aren't really trying to push a lot of the relationships, not contacting them all the time and everything else. What were some key things that you were doing in the beginning to build those relationships? Like where it became organically, like, was it like, what were kind of the steps that you would recommend to say, hey, this is the approach that I kind of took. And then it's a, step back or like follow up, run into each other. What were kind of things that you were doing?
Yeah, good question. So like early on, if there was like a realtor in a specific area that I knew was killing it, but like they weren't like the person on all the bus benches and bus ads and stuff, like someone that would be approachable, what I would do is I'd actually go on the MLS and look at their listings, or I'd go on their realty website and look at their listings, find something cool about some of the listings that they have up, and just compliment them. I'd follow them on LinkedIn, and I'd like all their content. I'd comment on it, just so if they didn't know me on a first name basis at that point, they kind of would like start to see my name pop up, and then there'd be like name recognition. And also, like, I'm not really trying to sell them anything. I'm just kind of trying to like befriend them and respect their craft and what they're doing. And that really helped start getting things kicked off. And then when the relationship was built, a lot of these guys would do community events where they would try to do something for their clients, do something for the community. I'm like, if you're ever doing anything like that, let me know. I'm happy to toss in a gift certificate, or I'm happy to show up to one of your events and just be a resource of information. I don't necessarily need to show up to an event and be like, I need to get 5 confirmed jobs out of this. It's more about, let me talk to 40 of your clients, let them know who I am, what I represent, and how I can help them if they ever need help. And either they can come to me directly, or you can pass my name over. And from there, like, not being so aggressive is what made the difference for me. And then if you amplify that over 10, 20 times with different groups, it really snowballs into a huge network.
Just bear with me a second. I really want you to talk a bit slower as I write this down, because I want to make sure that I steal all this details because, the Vancouver market for You Move Me, I just want to be that one step ahead. Which realtors were you visiting? Can you just mention those ones? No, I'm joking.
I think you're going to need a couple pens and a lot more paper to write them all down.
That's right.
Hey everyone, it's Matt from MovingLetters.ai. I'm super excited to announce our newest product, the Simple Note. The Simple Note is an extremely simple, handwritten product to get you into more homes at an affordable rate. Right now, you can get 500 of these to targeted newly listed homes for only $8.95. Guys, check out the link down below. Sign up today and join the handwritten revolution. Let's go.
So moving forward, so you kind of, because you mentioned earlier, you stepped away from the game. So you were in there. What made you leave? What made you want to change things up? Because they were still the corporate office, right? Like YouMoveMe was still part of the O2E brand at the time.
Yeah, so great question. Like back to when we first started, when I first started doing the furniture store grinding, trying to be going from like a bad estimator to an okay estimator. I was like, I'm going to stick at this job for 90 days until I find a better job. I'm like freshly out of school, still haven't really found my footing on what I want to do. And then here I was 4 years later being like, I worked my way up from a business development representative to running a $2 million business as the GM. I'm like, I have a choice. I can either like spend the rest of my career in moving, which I never thought I would be doing in the first place, but I enjoyed it because I was getting promoted and I was doing a good job, or I could kind of spread my wings to see what I want to do next. So I decided to take a break and go do something different. And then I went to go work for my friends who I actually met in my second year of university, and I did my first college project on them, and they owned a company called 505 Junk. Okay. Did you want to ask me anything specifically about my time at 505 Junk, or do you want to?
No. Oh, you just kind of stopped. I was like paying attention, listening. I was like, and like carry on, like whatever. You're just like, okay, boom, stop on the. Are you reading off like a paragraph? You just hit like
I'm not reading. I'm not reading off anything. I think pacing is important.
It's like you're telling me a story. You just ended the chapter, and I was like, okay, carry on.
Okay.
Well, so you basically left, but like. You wanted to then what? Like you were at YouMoveMe, you did your time there and everything else. I mean, I'm assuming you probably have a decent relationship then with like Brian Scudamore. Like, is there these conversations or like some other type of VP that you're getting to a point? I mean, I see where they are now. So I'm just trying to see like, are there conversations was trying to say to you, hey, we want you to do franchises. We want you to branch out. Like you're the GM of this location. Like, was that not a topic? You were kind of like, no, I'm just going to jump ship. I'm going to help my buddies out at 505 Junk and grow this company. Like, I mean, give me some like closed door boardroom conversations. like what's happening at that point? Because for a lot of guys, that want to get into the moving industry, you really hit the strong points, like get out there, hustle, do all this kind of stuff. But someone that might be listening that is working for a company or going, how can I go to that next step without jumping ship? Like, can you elaborate on like what was your big decisions on that?
For sure. I think like how I operate business now compared to how I operated business like 7-ish years ago when I chose to leave is wildly different. Like before, I wasn't necessarily as aggressive or like clear on what I wanted to do in terms of my next steps. It's kind of like, okay, I've decided I'm leaving. I'm going to go do something else without really opening up the door for other opportunities. I would always tell them at HQ a bit, like I was talking to the managing director at the time, like I wanted to go do more, but they always viewed me as, and painted me into a corner as a great salesperson, which is fine. But like, I wanted to be more than a salesperson because at that point I was running the business. I remember one time we were doing a conference, like one of our planning meetings, and I can't remember where we were. I think we were in Minneapolis or something. And they're like, we want to do a competition where two people have to cold call a realtor live and book a meeting with them, right? And so it was, obviously I was chosen, and one of the other guys, I think he was from Toronto at the time, cold called the realtor on speakerphone in front of all the franchise partners. I closed it on the spot, and they were all enamored. They were all cheering. They were cheering so much that the other guy didn't even want to go up because it's like, there's no way I can top what this result was. And while it was like really great to have that ego boost and that pump, like it really kind of solidified me as a salesperson. And so I kind of wanted to show, like, I'm going to go leave here on my own volition. I'm going to go do something else and go help my friends out in a different industry, just to show to myself and also to show other people when I'm looking for other jobs that I'm not pigeonholed into moving. I mean, any industry, I'll go prove it there. So even when I was pitching to 505 junk guys, they're like, what are you going to bring to the table? Because like, we understand you're a good salesperson, but like you work at moving. I'm like, for me, the methodology wasn't really about moving. I'm like, I'm a master of building relationships. So put me in any industry and I'll make it happen for you guys. So when I went on to 505 junk, I was going to become I was actually appointed as their director of sales, their first senior level hire as an outside hire of the company. It was a huge investment and leap of faith for them. And my number one goal was, as long as I'm here, I want to make sure that they become full on what they're paying me and that they can break even, and this was a worthwhile experiment. And for me, I spent a lot of time coaching their franchisees at the time on how to build relationships and manage accounts. I didn't really know how to estimate junk removal, especially the volume. I tried to leave that to the other guys on the operational side. But one thing I was really good at was going through their existing list of business and looking at like the last time people did a junk service with them, like on commercial accounts, and just power dialing these guys until they gave us another shot. And I was able to bring back a lot of accounts that way. It's looking at it more like playing a game of chess versus just being so like by the book and methodical on something. You really have to look at the whole situation, see what the moving parts are and where you can adjust it, and then just experiment. And you never kind of know what strategy will work. But once you find something, you ride that momentum as long as you can. And
I agree. And I thought you were hitting a period there. I thought that was the end of another chapter. You kind of just stopped. Now you're just throwing me for a big loop here. The essence to me of a follow-up and looking at old accounts is so huge. And I bring that up with our company and our sales agents all the time when we look at a company that, like Salmon's, has been around for so long. We've had accounts. Like, we've done the E&Ws, the McDonald's, the deliveries, the commercial stuff, right? Like, it's huge. And then I go, well, what's happened? Right? Like, where did we stop doing these deliveries, and why are they not using us again? And how are we going to get these accounts back again? So, you're right. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of like just cold calling, trying to find the right people. Half the people that used to use us, and within that large corporation don't work there anymore, or whether they retired and someone new has stepped in. Like, if you want the business, you got to bring that hustle. I think it's huge, right? Like, if you're not doing it, someone else is.
Yeah, like, just because someone like leaves and you have to talk to someone new doesn't mean that you're automatically going to keep getting the business. You have to always kind of reestablish value throughout the chain. Like, I remember one time a guy at 505 Junk stopped using this because he got a bill that was a little higher than he wanted to pay. And he was just like, you know what? I'm writing these guys off. I just went and saw him on site one day and I'm like, how can we earn your business back? I understand, like, our prices are actually going to be more expensive than when you last used us. But this isn't about a price relationship. This is about a service relationship. So how can we make sure your needs are met and we can charge the margins that we have to charge? Because at the end of the day, you have a business, we have a business, and if we work together, we can all benefit from it. And I think he appreciated that point of view because, like, it's kind of hard to know if someone's upset about a bill being too high without actually talking to them about it, because they don't want to be that guy to complain about their bill to try and get money off, and maybe it's a pride thing. But that's why it's so important to nurture relationships all the way through. And, like, if someone leaves, go talk to the next person that comes in, restate the history and how long you guys have been working together, and reestablish the value proposition that you bring to them, and then see if there's an opportunity to work together again. And if they say no, they're not interested, maybe follow up on it next quarter, but don't let that relationship die. There's no sense in ever letting it die, because someone else will take your place, and then they'll just keep carrying on where you left off.
MoverMarketing.ai is changing the game for moving companies with their innovative digital marketing solutions. I've been working with them on my SEO and website, and the results are incredible. My online presence has improved, making my site both visually appealing and highly visible to potential customers. But that's not all they do. MoverMarketing.ai offers a full range of services, from engaging social media management to robust branding, advertising, and public relations. They help you build a strong, trustworthy brand. If you're ready to elevate your moving business, I highly recommend MoverMarketing.ai. They've been a game changer for me, and they can be for you too. Thanks to MoverMarketing.ai for sponsoring this episode and for their support.
You are at 505 Junk. You end up leaving. You hit a milestone. Yeah. Like, what happened there? Because things kind of changed up.
That was one of, I would say, like, if not the hardest decision in my professional career, still to this day, if not being one of the hardest decisions. I was enjoying my time there, but at the same time, they were a growing business, but I was a heavy draw on their resources in terms of like what I was earning. And it's not to say that they were stretching themselves thin to make it happen. It was more about the relationship I have with these guys. These are two college guys that are grinding a business out. They finally started to hit scale, and they're starting to build momentum. But having me as their first senior hire, it's taking away on what they can do to expand on their growth. My growth was stagnating a bit. I was spending a lot more time coaching them, like their franchisees, instead of driving the sales. And I was not doing as much as I wanted to be doing in terms of delivering enough revenue to cover my costs. So I had a call from my previous boss at the Vancouver franchise to join the mothership and come to O2E directly and working at YouMoveMe's corporate team. And for me, it was something like I was humming and hawing about, but I was like, as long as I can close out 505 Junk's contract with them and making sure that after I leave, they break even on what they've invested in me, I'll feel okay with that. And I was very grateful because I was able to do that. So from a standpoint, it was a wash for them, but at least I helped them a little bit from the sales standpoint. And I can go and do what I originally sought out to do, is join the O2E mothership, so to speak, and work for Brian Scudamore directly. But The position they brought me into was sales center manager. And I'm like, I've never managed a sales center in my life. I know nothing about the sales center. And okay, I'll give it a go. But then they sweetened the deal with like, we'll let you do a bit of coaching as well. And that was ultimately kind of where I wanted to go as the next logical step. Because like for me, it's like, okay, business development representative, sales manager, general manager, sales center manager, and sales coach, and then just keep working my way up the ladder, so to speak. And yeah, that was a whole thing. But feel free to ask me any questions about that.
No, that's fine. I mean, I'm more kind of curious on, you get the phone call back, you want to come back in there. They bring you back into a higher position, I guess, than what you were before, because before you're just like kind of GM of YouMoveMe. Now you're into like the upper launch of the OTE brand. But you're talking about like the sales center. Now, was that also for like the Shack and Shine for the one that got junk, or was that strictly again just for YouMoveMe?
Just for YouMoveMe. But the difference was instead of working for the Vancouver franchise, I was managing, I think at the time it was like 26 locations all at the same time.
Okay. Well, then what happened? Because
so
they're not part of it anymore.
Yeah, so I took that role, and with 3 years of onboarding, the other guy left, and I was off to my vices. And like I started looking at like how the operation was happening. I'm like, I really like how these operational flows are working. I think we can do it better. And I got to a point where my boss was like, stop turning over rocks because you've uncovered more problems that we can solve at this point. So like, let's deal with what we can up front. And on day 89, or it was either day 89 or day 90 of my 90-day probation, my former boss comes into the room and says, YouMoveMe has been sold and you guys are leaving this office. I'm no longer overseeing you anymore. I thought I was being terminated, but YouMoveMe separated from O2E Brands as a separate company. That was my first time ever being part of like a takeover or like a separation. And it was really, really challenging. But those were probably the most formidable years of my career. I say probably, but like for sure they were, in terms of like learning and growing. Because
what were some of the takeaways that you got from that?
Most people will run, but if you stay and you fight the good fight, you'll gain more like experience and like wisdom than you ever will in like 10 years of business in 1 year. Because essentially everything is challenging and everything is painful. It's hard to break apart from like a large organization and go as an independent, but you come out stronger for it. I went from being the sales center manager to being promoted to field coaching, to field operations, to being promoted to director of operations, to being promoted to chief of staff after I left O2E. That was in the span of, I think, 3.5 years. Versus if I was at O2E, for me to become the managing director of YouMoveMe, which essentially what I was as chief of staff temporarily, it would have taken 10 plus years. But I got to basically jump on a rocket ship of career growth, make a lot of mistakes along the way, but also learn more about business than I could have ever had doing anything else. And who
was training you? Like, who's your mentors at this point coming in here? Because sure, okay, Prabh is, the guru. I would call him my Buddha. That knows all, is all. But at the same time too, like, let's be honest, like you're jumping into positions that are similar to a degree, different titles, but at the same time too, I mean, it's a lot to take on. So who is your go-to? Like, who are the people that you are looking to go, teach me, a wise one?
Yeah, great question. The reality was there was not really anyone inside the business outside of the owner, Lori Baggio, who was giving me as much advice as he could, but like he's also managing multiple other businesses that he owns. So you're kind of left to your own devices. So when you look to your left and you look to your right and there's no one that you can really lean on, you lean on the franchise partners, the ones that have actually signed up, that have mortgaged their house against this business and then need this to work. And you listen to the customers and you listen to their feedback, and then you start building a roadmap based on that. So if it wasn't for the franchise partners believing that I could be the guy for them, I would have failed. And it's not to say I didn't make any mistakes along the way. I made tons of mistakes, but we also doubled in size after we left O2E. We will be a $100 billion moving company in the next few years. And I'm sorry to say, but I'm not sorry to say this, we wouldn't have done it under O2E, because being independent, we get to move a lot faster. We get to make a lot more mistakes, and we get to do things the way we want to do them.
So it's we're looking at the fall of 2024. How many franchises are out there right now?
There's 21 locations right now. So we have 17 in the US and 4 in Canada. So we've actually gone down in locations, but doubled our revenue. So it goes to show how much opportunity there was and how much stagnation there was previously. But not to say that things weren't run properly there before. It's just we needed a change of guard and we needed a change of perspective. Lori saw that opportunity and he's like, "Are you willing to do this with me?" And I was like, "Well, I don't really have a choice now, so let's just go do it and see what happens."
Make it work.
Yeah.
But so I always come from like two different standpoints. I think we've talked about this over lunch. I get the essence of a company that goes, and I always love this saying, make sure you pick up your quarters in your one area before chasing all the nickels everywhere else, right? Which means make sure that, if I have a location in Vancouver, I am killing it in Vancouver so much that everybody wants to use me as a moving company before I even think about opening up a franchise anywhere else, because it's going to be way harder, a lot harder. Then I flip the script, and I know guys like yourself, TM from Let's Get Moving as well too, who open up franchises. You got 2 Men in a Truck. You have what else? Which other big ones that are out there? You got like the College Hunks franchise that's down in the States as well too. There are these franchised moving companies, Piece of Cake that's blowing up, Roadway that's blowing up, just to name a few. Like, is there always like a good even ground for people? Like, would you say as you're opening up franchises, like, go ahead, is there like a special roadmap that says, if you're going to franchise, hit the major cities, then work on the smaller cities? Or is it the opposite where people say, hit the smaller cities because the major cities are being taken care of? Like, is there a sweet sauce to getting franchises? Because you're saying, well, yeah, man, we could have had 50 franchises, but maybe not made as much money. We've actually gone smaller, but like our revenue's higher. So like, what's the roadmap on this?
Yeah, great question. My philosophy is a bit different than other people. Like you mentioned, other locations have sprouted up faster that have added way more locations. But on a revenue per location standpoint, I guarantee we blow them out of the water. And like when we look at it now, we don't want to go into LA and operate in Los Angeles where there's 130 other moving companies there. I'd rather go work in like San Bernardino Valley and where there's 15 competitors and I can take out them one by one and be the market leader in that business. Because if I could be the number one mover in San Bernardino, it's better than being the maybe 115th mover in LA, because a lot of these guys have been there for 40, 50 years. It's also going to cost me an astronomical amount of money to be able to compete with them. So if you look at what I would call B or C tier cities, which aren't major metros, I think those are the best ones for opportunity. There's urban sprawl everywhere, right? Like the whole world, like all of North America is going to continue to get populated at a higher and higher clip. There's more and more density in every city that's happening. There's a housing crisis in every town, city, and village, basically, in all of Canada at this point. So they're all going to need movers because there's all going to be more population density. So if I can gain the market, being the brand leader in an area, I'm going to do that. If you look at us in a lot of in the smaller markets that we're in, we're almost the number one mover. If not, we're the highest reviewed mover. And so that strategy works.
What Yeah, I like that. Thanks for the solid answer. What works best when it comes down to marketing? Because you're going to get people that turn around and say, well, I don't have the budget that these guys do. So, I mean, there's no way for me to compete. And, these guys are everywhere because they're spending XYZ every month. What are my options? Like, what have you guys done in a sense of marketing to get to that? And especially when you look at a company like yourself that has a really strong name for itself already, and to me, nationwide at least, what would you recommend for the smaller guys that are like, I just want to kind of get out there?
It's a great question. Like, you got to go back to basics, right? Like, if you can't compete on ad dollars, you got to go out there, shake hands and kiss babies. And you can't be afraid of it. Like, in 2024, people are so reluctant to go do in-person networking and actually meet people. It's kind of sad and pathetic in my opinion, to be honest. Like, I'm guilty of it too. Coming out of COVID, I almost forgot what it was like to network. I forgot what it was like to meet people in person, invest in learning about their business, let them invest in learning about mine, versus just treating it like a transaction. Like, what can you do for me and what can I do for you? Because that's not really what business is about. So the more you put yourself out there and the more you seek discomfort when it comes to actually meeting people, the more your business will grow. Because the more people that know you as the guy, the more likely you'll get business. And instead of paying $100 for a cost per lead, you're actually paying $0 because you're actually just investing your time in there versus buying every lead. And people will naturally want to refer you if you do a good job for them. Like I said, it's been 7 years since I left eMoving Vancouver, I think, at this point. And I still get calls to this day. There's countless other movers that they've probably met in those 7 years or they could get a referral from. But it's about the relationship with the person. I even tell them, I don't work there anymore. They're like, can you help me?
Stop calling me.
I would never say that because I don't want to lose revenue for anyone.
I'm joking.
But it's like, it doesn't even matter if I don't work there. They just trust my opinion so much because you've had that impact. And it doesn't happen sitting at a desk and hoping that Google Ads and my website will perform. You have to go out there. You have to push it. It sucks. It's a lot of work. But the reality is, what doesn't suck about business? It's all a lot of work.
Well, I always figured as big as you get, you always think of the small guys like myself. And so I really always appreciate your auto text responder that says, look, I'm unavailable. So just please call Mark at Sam is Moving and Storage in case we can't assist you. So it's really appreciative. I mean, the pleasure of networking business to business, I always thank you for that.
No problem. I'm happy to say that.
Yeah, that's right. The way you've grown in your business and everything else is always inspiring. That's remarkable, and I really appreciate it. And I appreciate our friendship that we have. One of the things I always tell people is, you go back 10 years, and you even touched about this on how life is in 2024. I mean, COVID shut everybody inside. Then 2022 happened, where if you were in the moving business, you were booming and you were just killing it, and then you get out of it and you think, well, business is just going to keep flying at me, but you don't. And you got to get back to that grassroots. You got to get back to the networking and marketing. But what I've really seen explode is the growth of mentorship within peers. Like, our peer group has realized that it doesn't work like it used to 40, 50 years ago. If you were part of a van line, great, you had that network. You shared insights to making sure that you as an agent for a large van line was successful and huge, and we had the business. But if you had a moving company that you knew down the street, you generally weren't opening the doors to sharing your own secrets, your way of doing things as it is now. Like, would you agree? Like, I find even, for ourselves going, hey, okay, let's get a couple moving companies together. Let's go for lunch. Let's chat about what's happening in our industry, and we see this transpire more and more. I think it's fantastic because it allows ourselves to collaborate, to work together, to not reinvent the wheel. Maybe you knew something about a new truck that was coming out that I didn't. It doesn't have to be, hey, this is how we're doing this all the time, and here's our financial numbers. But I always find that it's great to be able to share solid information, that could help benefit ourselves and grow.
Yeah, it's like, it's pretty interesting because like, let's look 10 years ago, I wouldn't talk to any competitor because of like, oh, they're gonna steal information from me, which it's just stupid to think. There's no secrets in moving. We put stuff into trucks and we move stuff out of trucks into new homes. Like that's the reality of it.
The hidden secret. Okay, this is like that's
yeah. There you go. The secret's out. I'm sorry, but then like my number one pet peeve at this standpoint is like often when I meet with other movers, just like chatting like through random circumstance or in a networking event, they're like, "Oh, I'm not as big as you, so like you can, like there's nothing I can provide you." I'm like, it couldn't be further from the truth. It's like a lot of the time, if I'm even when we're talking in our moving group, it's like I'll just share ideas of what I'm thinking about. Like often when I'm now working like on the business or in a call, I'm thinking about how to make the business better, not from a moving standpoint because there's not much innovation left there, but overall from a business standpoint. So I'll throw out ideas and theories to you guys because it's different than me telling my franchise partners what I think that they should do. And it's about like, hey, does this make sense to you guys? What do you think about this? And I'm proving out ideas that other business owners, if they're interested in it, it's likely a good move. But if they collectively have no interest in it, it's probably not that great of an idea and I need to go flesh it out more. So why would I prove it to a testing ground of people that I'm supposed to educate on my harebrained ideas without vetting it through other people's first? And like, that really gives me a much better perspective of it because also like I get an understanding of would this scale up to a much larger location or would this scale down to a smaller location? It's all applicable. But being hyper-focused and obsessed about like looking at the business holistically and talking to others about it, there's no better opportunity. And you can't do this shit with a Facebook group. Like you can ask a question about basics about moving fundamentals, but to get down to the strategy and overall philosophy of how you're going to operate, you have to do it in person. And you have to deal with people that are actually going to put the work in and actually bring something else to the table as well. It's not like they all have to bring you a tip for every tip you share, but it's about a conversation where everyone speaks at the table and there's not just everyone just sitting down writing notes from one person's perspective only.
Yeah, I totally agree. The, I always find it funny when you mentioned saying, when someone comes up to me and says, well, you're much bigger than me. This is, there's no way for me to understand or share what I've learned too. And you're right. I always think the opposite a lot of the times because the guys that I've seen that are at a smaller scale than I am are generally even more hungrier than I am. And so like, I love to surround myself with guys like that because it just motivates me even more. Like, oh, I got to stay up. It keeps me on my toes. Like I got to stay motivated and constantly thinking about the next possible way to do better, whether it's in my business, whether it's in my life. Sometimes I'm hanging out with moving company owners that are still in their late 20s, early 30s and going like, oh, we do the gym, we do this. And I always joke being like, well, you don't have kids yet. And, you're not married yet. But then it also makes me think like, I still got to make sure that my life balance is applicable too, right? Like, am I staying healthy in my mind and in my body and all of it? So I think it's key.
Yeah, for sure. I think like you have to really talk to other different groups and like talk to a wide network of people about business philosophy to see if what you're talking about is matching what's current as well. Like it's very easy for us to get like you said, like smaller groups, like smaller guys being young and hungry. Like if anything, by that virtue, I can't be any more old and bloated than I am now because I'm only continuing to get more bloated. But the reality is like we're experiencing more gains now coming out of this high interest rate environment than we did when we doubled in size because we're trying to go back to basics and just making sure that we take the best of what's out there. If you think you've solved the puzzle, you couldn't be further from the truth. Look at how many huge businesses that have existed in our lifetime become really, really big, multi-billion-dollar corps, and then they go under. Well, it's exactly what you said. They get fat and bloated, and they don't listen to anyone. So I can't stress it enough. I think it's so important, and I agree. The younger guys are going to do a lot of things that don't make any sense, but they might have that one thing that they're doing that you're not doing that you're like, maybe I should do this. Because the landscape is always going to evolve, right?
You look at, and you touched on this too, about, the ever-evolving economics that we live in. High interest rates, different changes. We came out of COVID, then we're hitting a recession. We got high inflation. Everything's kind of like all over the map. I was reading an article where someone was saying in 2025 is going to be the game changer for the storage industry because you're going to see a lot more opportunity to get into self-storage and acquisitions and grow on that, because other companies aren't going to be able to foot the bill because of higher interest rates and maybe partners walking away and getting out of the game. What do you say to people about your You Move Me's goals and where you see the industry leading into 2025?
I mean, we've been kind of like in a sleepy environment. We've still been growing, which has been great. But like, I keep telling the franchise partners, get ready, man. It's going to get a lot harder and a lot more aggressive, because we're about to turn up, and it's going to be a lot fast. Like, sure, this has been great. We're growing, but now it's really doubling down on the focus to 100 million. Like, if you guys want to retire or you want to sell your businesses, we got to get these to as big of businesses as we can before that day happens, because someone will want to buy a growing business and a large business. Someone doesn't want to buy a stagnating business that isn't growing. So for me, it's like doubling down on in-person relationships and making sure that we capture all that demand that's there. We're only going to get more higher paying jobs in Canada and more industries to come in here. Like, as the US floats, people will float to Canada. As Europe is under tension, people will come to Canada. So you got to capture those opportunities. So we were really good in COVID, but now I want us to be 3, 4, 5x the amount of demand we had in COVID, because we're just that much better.
What do you say to guys that turn around and say, well, okay, I got to up the hourly rates because of things like COVID and because of inflation, I'm paying my movers now a lot more. The wages are higher. I got to increase the hourly rate, but then I'm not booking as much because my hourly rate is quite high. So I need to drop it. And then you get the other guys that are cutting costs because they're seeing no one wanting to book their rate. So they just change it up. Like, is this also an area that you guys are struggling with in different markets, like across America or across Canada, that you're getting feedback from maybe franchise partners?
Yeah, I think like everyone's hurting in terms of price point inflation, and it's hurting everyone, and people don't have as much disposable income for moving. But the reality is, if you have to pay more and you cut your rates, you're going to continue to whittle away at the little profit that you're generating. And then you're going to have a business that operates at break even or operates at loss, which means you shouldn't have a business at all. So the reality is, you got to find a way to cover that gap and justify the reasons why you have that added expense. Like, if you're the number one mover in the market, you should theoretically be able to charge whatever you want. I would argue that all of our locations should raise their prices versus decrease them, because you eventually have to pick a lane. You have to stay in that lane. If you waver off that lane, there's no coming back from it. Because if you raise then drop, people are never going to let you pay that increase again. Or it might take you another 18 months to get that. So why spend 18 months operating a break even when you can operate at profit? And for those that are like, oh, like all the customers are saying no, or my conversion's down. Well, you haven't done a good enough job in getting those customers to be excited about your brand when they look at you. They're only coming to you because they're price shopping 3 other brands. So build a better relationship network where these customers are going to be like, no, whatever, insert moving company name here is the only company I'm going with. I don't really care if they cost a bit more because I know what I'm getting.
Right. Do you, when we talk about that, there's a sense of culture, there's a sense of how you train the guys, and they represent the company. What does You Move Me do in a sense of making sure that the guys are trained, that they have this sense of, I could always say respect, but they want to work for You Move Me. They want to be proud of representing the brand. But what is something that you guys do to make that happen?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's like a culmination of things. Like, people are attracted to work for us because of our branding and how we look and how we present to customers, right? So when you look professional and you give customers a great experience, the movers get a tremendous sense of satisfaction for really helping people. Moving is super stressful. It's up there with death and divorce as top 3 stressors in life. So if we can help make that shitty day a little less shitty for people, you feel a sense of accomplishment yourself. But also, when you're representing well and you look professional, customers, especially now more than ever, feel a sense of obligation to tip you well for your services. I would say on average, our movers probably make more on an hourly basis with tips than any other mover that pays more, because we just have much better relationships with our customers and they understand what they're getting. So I would say a lot of movers are interested in working for us because they can make a lot more money because of the money that they get on top of the money they get in tips on top of their hourly wage. We pay competitive, but if we can't pay as much as some of the other players, they make that back on the tips. How do they get the tips? We train our guys just to be good people on site. if you're smoking cigarettes before you show up on a job site, or if you're sloppy or you don't look professional, you're not going to get as much money. That's just the reality of it. Why would a consumer tip a mover that looks like shit compared to a mover that looks professional? It's all about image at the end of the day.
Of course, and I agree that. I used to have this philosophy where because society is so judgmental, and it's funny that we try not to be, we say that we're not to be, but if you send two old guys to a job site, there's a tendency the customer is going to turn around. It doesn't matter if they've been doing it for 30, 40 years. Nothing breaks. It's fantastic. There's a tendency the customer is going to say the job took too long. Yep, because they were older. You send two young guys, clean cut, look like they're football players, super smiling, good looking, to a job site. Customer's going to say, I don't think they had that much experience. I did find that scratch on the floor, but maybe we won't look at it because they were really nice guys. And then, I'd flip the script to say, okay, well, maybe if we send one older guy, one younger guy, there's like the perfect recipe. And I found that recipe has worked in a proven method because a customer feels secure and confident to have the older guy that has the experience. That's what they feel like. That guy could be like 1 week into this job with no experience, and the younger guy actually has better experience than he does. But it's funny how people perceive and judge off of appearance. And so I'm always so keen when I see movers, on the side loading up a house, and it's a hot sunny day, and they're in a tank top, like a white tank top, not logoed, not like the truck is the deckled and everything looks fine, but they're not representing the company. I'm like, what are you doing? Or if a guy's not with a nice haircut or clean shaven, it's like, go home. We have a mirror at our office that says, this is how you look like to our customers, right? When they walk out the door. And it's important for them to know, hey, I got to look presentable. This is so important. And you're right. It's because a customer is going to tip you more. A customer is going to appreciate the brand, appreciate the company more when they get the service, but they also get that look, that image, right? Like you see companies that are blowing up and succeeding because they've built this brand image, not just by the trucks, not just by their advertising, but also by the movers that come out to see you, right? And I think You Move Me kills it on that end. I mean, and you guys always have, and a lot of respect to your brand and your company because You Move Me has set the bar a long time ago, I think, on a brand consistent model. But then also there was this always persona I found, especially in the beginning, where the guys I would always see in the trucks that You Move Me were clean cut, in uniform. They were always wearing like a vest, right? You couldn't not unsee them. No one was not wearing their brand, like their logo, shirts, in uniform. And I commend you guys for that.
I appreciate that. I think it's important to not cut corners when it comes to uniforms as well. Like we could buy green t-shirts and give everyone one t-shirt when they sign up. Well, the reality is that t-shirt's going to be ruined after the first day of the move anyways. And so you can't really cheap out on uniforms. You have to buy stuff that's comfortable for the guys and give them multiple of them. You can charge them a deposit on it where after they've been there for a little while, then like it's paid for. But at the same time, like they have to represent you well. If they only have one shirt and they're expected to wash that shirt after every move, but they have a 16-hour day, it's not going to happen. Even if they only have two, it's not going to happen. Then they're going to look like shit the next day. And it's not on the mover. It's on you. Because you have to invest in your team, right? Like we want people to feel comfortable and look good. But the reality is like you can have an old guy or a young guy on site, but if the guy looks professional and if they do a good job of introducing themselves to the customer, I think that's the most important thing. Like in You Move Me, when we go to a job site, the crew leader will introduce themselves to the customer, but they'll also introduce the crew. It shouldn't just be like, oh, okay, only go to one person. Hey, Mark, can you come tell that guy to go do this instead? Or can you tell that guy to move a little faster? It shouldn't be that. They should be first name basis. Like these people, because customers are inviting you into their home to move their personal belongings. It should be a first name relationship. So the customers actually feel comfortable with you in their home. But if they're just saying, hey, you, hey, this, can you go do this? Like it shouldn't be like that. So I think do a better introduction, and then being clean cut obviously matters a bit, but it's not the most important factor. The most important factor is that the customer knows who you are and what you're about to do for them.
5 tips for somebody getting in the industry based on the experience that you've had?
Ooh, okay. There are no shortcuts. It takes a long time to actually start to make money. Investing in your movers is equally as important as investing in your trucks. Always make sure your movers have like enough moving equipment to do the best job possible. Set realistic expectations with customers. Like often when I'm talking to a trade partner, I'll tell them we're not going to make every move perfect. Because while they hope that that's going to happen, it's not going to happen. Stuff will go wrong. But like the sooner you accept that things will go wrong, the easier it is to kind of move past it and understand that this is part of doing business. Don't ever think that you're always going to have a perfect move because you're going to lose your mind. I always used to try to do that. And then when a mistake would happen, I'd be like ripping my hair out of my head. I'm like, well, a mistake's probably going to happen tomorrow too. This is a game of making the least amount of mistakes. So try to be as consistent as possible to have that happen. But don't think it'll always be 100% track record.
Yeah, I used to say that to a lot of clients as well too. Like a lot of the, especially the accounts where we're doing a lot of deliveries, a lot of work for them on a regular basis. I used to be like you. That's why I have no hair. I'd like freak out if something's going wrong because I was like, we're going to lose the account and everything else. And then I kind of changed my mentality and started off going, look, we're going to be doing so many moves for you. There's bound for something to go wrong, but let's make sure that we fix it right away and we change it around and then work on making it better so that we can avoid that in the future. And they're always been happy. Like there's never been an issue because they know they can trust that if something happens, we're going to fix it right away.
Yeah, I think that's the nature of anything in the service-based business. No one's got 100% service record in any business ever. Doesn't exist. If they're saying that, they're just lying to you. So let's just set the right expectations with customers. Like it's more about the fact of what you're going to do after about it. Because if you just like put your hands of 60 cents per pound, like that's all we're going to give, well, the customer's just not going to come back to you. Do right by them and let them understand that if something happens, you'll do your best to try to make it right. But if you just be like, just go read the contract, well, you're not really going to have a business. Good luck.
Now, I throw this with everybody. We're going to wrap it up, and I'm going to hit you with two things. One, share with me a funny or wild moving experience that you've had, whether you had to go on the truck or that you've heard from your guys. And then I want to hear an elevator pitch. We ran into the elevator together, and I said, boy, this guy's a good-looking guy in his You Move Me shirt, and I'm moving to Victoria. I'm going to say Vancouver. I already am here. And I want to know why I should be using You Move Me. So,
okay, so let's start with funny moving story. I'm not going to give you one about a move. I'll give you one about an estimate because this is a good one. And I will title this moving story as the dead cat funeral. So one time I go to a customer's home. I'm going to do the outside estimate. They open the door. They're both sobbing. I'm like, hey, I'm just here to do the estimate. My name's Prabh. Everything's like, oh, yes, please come in. They're like, sorry, we're a little upset today. Our cat passed away. I'm like, I'm very sorry that your cat passed away. My condolences to you and the family. They go, thank you so much. We're still breathing. And then we're walking around the apartment. It's a 2-bedroom apartment. And in random moments, they just start breaking out into hysterics. Like the most loud, audible crying that you can imagine over the cat. I'm like, okay, stay professional. Just do a good job. We'll be all good. It won't take that long. It's a 2-bedroom apartment. Okay, I'm all done with the estimate. I'm like, would you like me to go over the estimate with you? They're like, yes, we would. But we'd like for you to sit down and go over it with us. I'm like, okay, no problem. Like thinking that we'll sit at the dining room table. No, they want me to sit on the couch with them. Okay, no problem. It's a little bit strange, I'm sure. So I sat on the one side, and I thought like the husband or the wife would sit beside me. No, they would like me in the center of the couch, and then they were going to sit on either side of me. And they're like, before we go over the estimate, we'd like to play a slideshow for you. Okay. Like, yeah, we wanted to show you the slideshow of our cat that passed away. So I proceeded to say, okay. And I watched this funeral memorial of this cat that passed away with the customer, husband and wife sitting on either side of me, breaking out into hysterics. After the PowerPoint presentation was over, they asked if I would watch it again with them. And so I proceeded to say yes and watch it again with them. And then after, I was able to go over the quote. And the best part about that was they didn't even book with me. But that was a dead cat funeral story.
Oh, man. That's awesome. At least you had to pay tribute to the cat.
Yeah. So I wish I could remember the name. Maybe Rip Mittens or whatever the name was. That poor cat.
Oh my God. Are you a cat person?
No, I'm not a cat person, and that certainly didn't move me closer to the line.
I don't think so either. Oh man. Okay. I love it. We ran into an elevator. You got it? Go.
Yeah. No problem. Okay, so I understand that you're moving to Victoria and you're trying to decide which moving company to go with. It's a really big move, and there's a lot of logistics to think about. The cool thing is we plan all those logistics for you. One thing that you might not consider that you need to do when you're doing the move to Victoria is making sure that you have a ferry reservation on the way there and on the way back. Another thing to understand is a lot of movers will quote you on what it's going to cost for the move itself, but they don't take into account the travel time. We take that into account. We send you the ferry reservations in advance so you have an idea of what time we're going to go and what time we're going to get there. We also do the load up the day before because if we're going to take an early morning ferry, we want to make sure we have everything loaded so there's no room for contingency where like, oh, we're going to miss the ferry and we're going to miss our way back. And we also pick a return time with at least an hour of contingency because that way we're not going to miss the ferry back and build the customer back for that. So with us, you get peace of mind versus with others. They try to get you with a cheaper quote to try to earn your business, but you have a worse experience. So the choice is yours. What would you rather pick?
Ooh. Signing up with you guys. I love it, man. You're so good.
It's been a long time since I've done an elevator pitch on a moving quote to the island. So I've been like 6-7 years on easily.
I know. That's why that's why I didn't want to make it too easy for you. Oh, buddy, this has been great. I could probably sit here and we're going to probably have to get you back on. There's all these people messaging me going like, can you bring him back on for part 2? This has been great. I usually try and keep it at a good time constraint. So people are either driving to the office or driving around or working out or just so bored because they listen to so many moving podcasts or other podcasts that they just want to listen to me and you talk. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining me on today. I know your schedule is uber busy and you never have time for good old little Mark. So thank you for squeezing me in this morning. And check us out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We are everywhere. And Prabh, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, awesome. It was a pleasure. I can't wait for part 2, and I'll pencil you in to hang out sometime in October. September's already looking pretty slow. Have a great day. See ya.
All right.